think my first mentor was my dad, and he was an entrepreneur. He had an accounting firm, so it wasn't a high-tech thing. It was a public accounting firm, and I remember him having about 15 people that worked for him, and I actually went in and did payroll services for him at a pretty young age, about 12. And so that was my first exposure to computerization and sort of a company that my dad had built. So I always reflect on that as my first experience. Yeah, I mean, I worked a few odd jobs. I mean, the one that I like to tell the story of is on a spring break in high school, they would bus us to SeaWorld. And they'd put us in a Shamu outfit and we would sell lemon slushies. So this was my first exposure to sales, right? I mean, it was ridiculous. You were selling, some cup full of lemon stuff for like $7, right? Totally ridiculous costume and outfit, but you sort of learn that, people would buy things for more than they were really worth, especially if they were a captive audience. So I remember that lesson. I remember, working in my dad's office. He was in the accounting business, and just sort of that was very formative for me. But he would set me up with jobs where it was just data entry and little things like that. So I got exposed to computers really early and started programming when I got my first Apple IIe when I was about 13 years old. One teacher actually there are two that really jump out at me. One is Mrs. Gleason in my high school, who, she was the advanced placement computer science teacher. And she knew that the 5 or 6 of us that were in that class knew more than she did. So they let us do whatever we wanted. And we would sort of play jokes on people. We would set computer monitors back to back and pretend that they were incredibly smart. They would scan with a roving eye and say, "Oh, I like your red sweater." And they couldn't figure out how we were doing that, but we were really behind the other computer on the other side of the room. So we would play jokes like that on her and make her think that we were just amazing computer science people. But she also let us skip out a lot, which was cool. So I remember her influencing me that computers could be really fun. And then in my first job ever, which was part of my college experience, a major, Robert Reed, really taught me about artificial intelligence and how computers can be applied to really, really complex problems. And he and I actually invented the original idea behind you should be able to be reached anywhere. What you see today on WhatsApp and applications like that were things that we were talking about and playing with so many years ago. We just weren't smart enough to start a company back then. I was at Central Florida for 4 years. It was in Orlando. There's a research park right next to it, which is where I met Major Reed, who I learned a lot from and sort of thought about new ideas with a lot. But my focus was computer science, so I learned how to do all the classic things. Having grown up with hacking around and creating my own video games from age 13 to 18, it was very different to be in school and suddenly you're working on boring things like compilers and you're doing kind of the classic computer science problems. So I didn't actually love my computer experience in college. It wasn't nearly as fun as my own experiences that I created for myself when I was younger, but that was my focus there.